This week, Games of Service games coming to an end, Jedi Survivor gets delayed, and the big three aren't coming to E3 alongside our Dead Space review. This is the Two Penny Gamescast. What's poppin', players? Welcome back to the Two Penny Gamescast, episode 123. I am your host, Tavin Bothel, here with my good friend and very close to the camera co-host. Say hello to the people, Connor Elliott.
There's been fruit flies flying around, so I thought one was landing on my screen.
Oh, okay. You got some fruit flies going on. Okay. Connor, how's your week been, buddy?
Good.
Okay,
Yeah,
I was worried for a second there.
I was like, okay, what bad thing happened? Because this week was kind of, what am I saying? It was an amazing week because we had winter storms that prevented me from working. So I had a 4-day break, basically. It's out of nowhere, which is always appreciated because I do like my days off because I am naturally inclined to laziness.
However, you are an hourly employee, correct?
I am.
Okay, all right.
What's that supposed to mean, huh?
That's 4 days where you didn't get paid, bro. Like,
oh well. I value my personal time. So as far as it's just nice to relax. I like that more than money at the end of the day.
Sure.
Though both are important.
I feel that. I'm lazy too. I'm quite lazy myself. So there we go. Ladies and my week's been good too. I stopped by home for a quick weekend visit, saw the girlfriend, spent time with mom, all of that. Didn't have time for you, my brother. I'm sorry about that. We'll have to fix that next time.
Oh well.
I'll see you in spring break.
Yeah.
However, ladies and gentlemen, you're not here for our personal lives. You're here for some video game news stuff. So let's drop some sense on them, Connor. Ladies and gentlemen, if you didn't know, every week, me and Connor sit down and we give you the new news you need to know concerning the video game industry. We each come to you with two topics, two pennies, if you will, and we give you our 2 cents on them. You can get this show every week, youtube.com/2pennygamescast, and mainstream podcast services of your choice, every Monday at 8 a.m. Central Time. You can also see this show live every Sunday at about 3 o'clock. We were a little late today because I was driving back to Nacogdoches, to my apartment, to set up and all that stuff. I still have, you can kind of see it, like, my clothes aren't even put away. My PlayStation's also on the bed. Like, I threw down my stuff and I'm right back here.
You brought your PlayStation?
I did. Yeah, I had to play some Dead Space, Connor. Had to get through some more Dead Space. Now, which you will see my review for at the end of this episode, or just head over to youtube.com/2pennygames, where the full review is already up and live by the time you're watching this on YouTube. Connor.
We're going to get into it?
We got to get into it, my man. A lot of news this week, and some of it's all over the place. But let's go ahead and start with our first topic of the day. This is my first penny. The big three are not at E3. This is an IGN exclusive by Kat Bailey. E3's first physical event in 4 years was supposed to be a triumphant return for the trade show, an opportunity to recapture some of the excitement of past conventions, which historically have been major showcase events for the games industry. However, it appears that when E3 2023 hits the Los Angeles Convention Center in June, it will be without 3 of its most important draws. IGN has heard from multiple knowledgeable sources that Xbox, Sony, and Nintendo won't be part of E3 2023 or have a presence on the Los Angeles Convention Center show floor. This information comes on the heels of Xbox's announcement last week that it would be returning to Los Angeles for its annual summer showcase, while declining to confirm whether it would be part of the show itself. Speaking with IGN last week, Xbox CEO Phil Spencer said the platform holder is timing its showcase with E3 at a moment, quote, convenient for press and even consumers, end quote, at the event, meaning it's likely to roughly align with the event itself. Spencer also stressed Xbox's public support for E3 and the Entertainment Software Association. However, IGN understands that Xbox won't have a booth on the show floor. So, Connor, Xbox, Nintendo, and Sony not at E3.
Well, it was kind of a long time coming because the winds have been, changing for a while now. E3
Mm-hmm.
has been slowly and slowly getting less important, which, personally I find disappointing because I always enjoyed E3 when it came around. I enjoyed the big, showcase of when the games were being revealed. I missed, you know, seeing whatever personalities came on stage, even though most of the time they weren't particularly interesting. It was, of course, the game reveals that were the big important part. And I remember I would, I would be really excited because when the weekend would come for E3, I would watch G4 was the channel I would watch, and they would basically be like showing us all the gameplay footage and it
Rest
really
in
get me
peace.
hyped up. Yeah. But unfortunately, yeah, as Tavin just said, they're dead now. So now, after that, it kind of slowly stopped being so hype. And it seems like the award ceremony itself just kind of got lamer. And a lot of that was because people were kind of, these companies were becoming less invested in it and showing less stuff there. And now a lot of them are pulling out entirely, which, you know, isn't really, it's sad in the regards that E3 is going away, but the new way people do things nowadays is they have their own showcases. They can release things online and get a wide, reach a wide audience without having to do these whole shows that cost money and cost manpower. So logistically, it makes sense that this is the route that it's been going, but it is disappointing to see in my eyes, especially since it's not really anything that's been able to, no showcase has been able to, reach this same level.
I'm closely aligned with you. However, I think there's a couple of more factors here which make this interesting. First being like PlayStation hasn't been at E3 for a long time. I think their last time was what, 2018, 2019?
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while since they've been at E3. I think it was the 2018 showcase.
Were they the first one? They were the first ones to leave, right? To pull their support from it. Or was it Xbox?
EA has been in and out. Nintendo's been gone for a long time too, but they always do their big directs like the same week as E3. Xbox not coming is a first, to my knowledge. It's a first, and I think you brought up a lot of these big publishers just do their own thing now. Sony's been doing their own thing for a minute, and it's not a surprise that they're not coming back to E3 this year. Nintendo is well set with their directs, and I think more power to them. The most interesting bit about this is Xbox. They seem to clearly want a summer games showcase of some kind. Last year, it was tied to Jeff Keighley's Summer Games Fest, which has quickly risen into stiff competition with E3. And as we see this decline of E3 and this rise of Summer Games Fest, I think E3's big problem is that the ESA does not have a face. It doesn't have a brand. It's just this faceless corporation that, hosts this event. And 20 years ago, that was fine because there was gatekeeping. There was walls put up. And, now with the evolution of the internet and online content creation, those walls have fallen down. So not everyone is getting their news and resources from an IGN, a GameSpot, a Game Informer. Now they're getting it from some Joe Schmo who just turned on a camera like you and I, Connor, or, maybe a little more established, smaller presences like the Kinda Funnies, like the Easy Allies, where people can go and watch the showcases, get reactions as they happen. They can have fun and feel like they're watching the showcases alongside these personalities that they like and get those live one-to-one reactions alongside them and so forth, which is all exciting. And you also have to remember that E3 is not a consumer event. It's an industry event. It's for stockholders and it's for people like IGN to go in and get hands-on behind closed doors demos of whatever hotness is coming down the line. So, for the average consumer, E3 now no longer has a big draw. So, I think you're going to see a dramatic drop in views. There's not going to be so many people watching it. But what about E3 has really changed? Not that much. It's, unfortunately, the big three are gone. So, we're not going to know Spider-Man 2 isn't going to be at E3. We already knew it wasn't going to be. Xbox's Starfield or whatever else they have coming down the line in the next year or whatever won't be at E3, which is a bummer. But, I'm sure EA will still have a presence there now because they've been on and off, and it doesn't seem like EA Play, which died around pandemic times. I think 2020 was the last time EA did the EA Play. I just don't see where. Basically, what I'm saying is it's now time for those bigger third-party publishers to come in. You're going to see a lot from the Embracer Group. You're going to see a lot from Tencent. You're going to see a lot from EA and Ubisoft and guys like that, where you won't see, obviously, from Sony, Nintendo, and Xbox, at least on the E3 stage. And then, of course, Jeff Keighley with Summer Games Fest. Who else is not going to E3 because Keighley has better ties, or people are more aligned with Keighley's campaign to bring games to a forefront and show off games in a way that people care about, because I think they are seeing a direct translation from the personality, the fun, and the showing of a variety of different games, as opposed to E3, which was a little more separated, a little more like press behind closed doors, getting people from these different websites and news outlets to talk to them. You know what I'm saying? Where like, I think Keighley's got the right idea where it's like, okay, let's give everybody as much information as possible. And then, yeah, the press will come in and play their demos, but everyone is getting the same idea at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah, that seems that. Yeah. Summer Games Fest, as you said, is just kind of overtaking E3 because of those connections. He's been in bed with Kojima for a while. I mean, he's the big, guy who's, repped Kojima, obviously, with the Video Game Awards, him calling out Konami for preventing Kojima from accepting the award of Metal Gear Solid 5 at the time. And he also, what was the other company he does a lot of stuff with? Was it Xbox or Sony? I'm pretty sure it was Xbox. Like, he did stuff with Phil Spencer. Like, they would show up in videos from time to time.
He plays with all of them.
Yeah, so it makes sense that he would use that to start his own thing, whereas E3, as you said, is just very corporate-y. So it doesn't have the ground level support anymore as much as it does. Oh, something happened?
Yeah, there's just some like feedback in Streamlabs right here. So hold on, I'm gonna close down Streamlabs and reopen it. So everybody, stay with me here. I think we're back. Okay. I forget where we were in the conversation now.
I think we were kind of wrapping it up because we kind of said everything about how this was always, it was foreseen, knew it was coming.
Yeah, so for the most part, like, E3's not dead, but it's certainly losing relevance on the consumer front, and I think it's unfortunate that it's going this way. This is going to mess up all my time codes, so I'm just not even going to bother for the rest of the show, and I'll just do it later. Nice. All right. Moving on to topic number 2, and my second penny of the day. Sony slashes PSVR 2 headset output after pre-orders disappoint. We're pulling a Bloomberg article from Takashi Mochizuki. Sony Corporation Group reduced projections for the initial launch of its PlayStation VR 2 headset dramatically after pre-orders disappointed, signaling little improvement for the hyped but unproven virtual reality sector. The company halved its forecast for shipments of the PSVR 2, which is set for a February 22nd release date this quarter, to about 1 million units, said people familiar with its deliberations. Sony had previously aimed to have 2 million headsets ready for launch quarter and leverage its second-generation headset to drive user growth and adoption for VR. The Tokyo-based electronics giant has told a supply partner to expect reduced display panel orders, according to the people who asked not to be named as the information is not public. The company now plans to ship around 1.5 million units between this April and March next year. They added, though that figure may be adjusted further in response to demand. Sony shares erased gains after the news in Tokyo Tuesday, ending the day just below where they started. So, PSVR 2 headset, we're reducing our manufacturing. The pre-orders don't seem to be there. That's very unfortunate because I think this was sort of a make or break thing for Sony's VR branch, and I don't know if it'll ever really bounce back. I personally would like it to, because I think VR is an established sector of gaming as of right now, but I mean, let's just cut to the chase here. PlayStation, you marketed you priced your VR headset too high. It was $550, I believe, is the price for it.
$549.
$549. Yeah, that's way higher than anybody was really expecting or wanting, and that's really disappointing. And you kind of don't have the goods to match it. Like, there's only so much Horizon Call of the Mountain can do. There's only so much ports of games like Moss Book 2 can do to excite the audience. You know, Gran Turismo 7 coming with a fully fledged out VR mode where you can play the whole game in VR is nice, but it's not enough. You're marketing to a niche of your base, and I think the numbers are showing that. Like, you needed more guns and you needed bigger guns. Like, Horizon was not enough. Where is a Naughty Dog VR game? Where's an Insomniac VR game? Where's a Sony Santa Monica VR game? Or a Sucker Punch one? We're just kind of left, holding a headset that's going to collect dust in a couple of months. You did not give us enough reason, enough justification to invest in a thing that's just too much.
Yeah, and not to mention, you have to have a PS5 to have this work in the first place, which supply chain issues affected it for a long time. Now we're actually starting to see people be able to get them easier. They're appearing in stores now, but it's still something that you got to sink a bunch of money into just to also play a VR system, which, how much is that? Minimum $400 plus $549 for the headset. At that point, I think most reasonable people would just go buy a PC. Because it has way more uses than a VR headset will have, which is just obviously to play games. With a PC, you can also get a cheaper VR system if you want to test the waters of VR. Because most people also haven't played VR. I saw how it looks, and it looks very nice, but not enough for me to sink money into it. You've done the same as well, Tavin. You also don't have room for it as well, which is another issue that you have to take into effect. It's not like a PS5 or a PC where as long as you find a place to set your system, you can play whatever games you want. You have to have the room for it. And some people, frankly, don't have that room. So, and as you said before, it doesn't have the games. So there's really no incentive as of right now, so early on in the VR stage as well, to want to be this invested into a game console when you don't have the money to spend for it. They really, really shouldn't have priced it at $549. I remember when we covered it, we were surprised at how much it was and that it needed to be with the PS5, and now I think it's showing on their back end with people not wanting to reserve them, especially because, we want to know it works in the first place because it is new technology. So a lot of people aren't going to be like, oh, I'm going to pre-order it and be the first one to get it. A lot of people, like myself, want to see how it plays, how the games are on it, if it even works when it comes out. Because once again, it is new technology, and new technology can be fickle. Look at Stadia. It was something that was hyped up by a pretty large margin of the gaming community, and then it failed miserably. It sucked. One of the worst consoles to be released in the past couple years.
It failed for different reasons. It's
failed
not
for reasons.
A one-to-one translation there.
Well, it is different new technology that wasn't, as good as it could have been. Wasn't as
I also think
wasn't as optimized. So
the technology wasn't the main problem with Stadia. It was an element of it. There's large portions of the world that can't it's not ready for streaming, but streaming is the future. Like, it's coming. We're gonna get there eventually. The problem is that Stadia wasn't marketed correctly. It wasn't structured correctly. You had to subscribe to a thing and then still buy full games. That's weird and confusing. And then Google didn't commit to it, and Google didn't spend the time to get enough people onboarded to bring games to the platform. Here, it's entirely in a Sony house, where we've seen PlayStation come out with different peripherals, different consoles, different ideas, and then not support them on the back end. Things like, this feels very much to me like PlayStation Move, where, what was that called? That like movement gaming?
I can't even remember.
I can't even remember what we used to call it. But yeah, that like Wii era, that Nintendo Wii area of everything needed to have motion behind it and get the gamer off the couch. PlayStation put out their version of that. It wasn't as nice as the other versions. They didn't support it in the ways that they should, and then slowly and surely closed it down. We saw similar behavior with the PlayStation Vita. And so now we're in this new space with the PSVR 2 where, okay, you had a successful first version of this based off of, I believe, PlayStation's own expectations, which was what they said, and the output they had. They had games that people liked. You think of Moss. You think of what's that shooter game that everybody likes? There was Blood on the Leaves, and there was Super Hot, and there was third-party selections such as like Job Simulator and so forth. But now virtual reality is in a place where we're not looking for experiences anymore. We're not looking for moments, cool gimmick type games where you're like, oh, cool, I'm moving it around with my actual hands. Now we're looking for full things. We're looking for real experiences. We're looking for full priced games. We see this on PC and on Oculus and MetaQuest and things like that. We're just looking for the one real game that is the breakout and makes you go, oh, I need this. And I don't know if Horizon Call of the Mountain has that juice. It does look great. It does look fun. I'm sure it's going to come out and get lots of great scores. But one, it's already proven that it seems like Horizon as an IP is just kind of cursed and just isn't connecting with the people like PlayStation would like it to connect, which is unfortunate because they are good games, quality games, and I'm sure Call of the Mountain is going to be quality as well. But now you've put so many gates in front of that game to where it's just hard to care. And I think it's apparent with how little it's being marketed. At least, like, I'm not seeing this game comes out this console comes out this month. I'm seeing nothing about it. And I think that's a failure of Sony. Like, you're not marketing your console correctly. You're not setting up your console for success. And it's hard to care about something when you make it so hard to the onboarding isn't there. We are not on board with the PlayStation VR 2. And this is coming from someone who would like a PlayStation VR 2.
Yeah, but as I laid out earlier, and as you obviously have laid out as well, too many barriers. Mm-hmm. It's not viable, especially for most people nowadays. I mean, prices have been increasing across the board. Groceries cost more. Subscription services have even upped their prices in some areas. Mm-hmm. Just more and more things are costing more and more money. And on the background of this, when they're trying to release a VR system that's new and expensive, a lot of people aren't going to want to take the dive, and reasonably so. You can't expect them to.
But at the same time, that's not PlayStation's fault.
No, that part's not, but it's bad timing. That's the bad timing of the release of it as well. So it just makes it all more difficult to sell this thing.
Very much.
And it doesn't seem like they're doing a good job of it. And maybe, who knows, maybe it'll come out and it'll be like, oh, this thing plays amazingly. There's a lot of fun games that you need to play. And then it kicks up in games and how many people buy them. But I don't see that happening.
The previews I've seen have all been very glowing. People seem to like the PlayStation VR 2. It's just, is Sony going to support it? Or is it going to go the way of the Vita, the way of the Move, the way of all of these other, other homes, PlayStation Home, that, or PlayStation TV, all of these things that was cool and neat and people loved and there was a fan base for, but Sony didn't support it. And really, I think it would be nice if Horizon Call of the Mountain comes out and everybody loves it, but if Call of the Mountain gets the same reception that, say, an Uncharted Golden Abyss got, dead in the water. Like the whole platform is done. Speaking of, I don't know how I don't have a transition. I had one earlier, but we moved past it. Anyways, moving on to our third topic. Connor, your first penny of the day. Amazon has reportedly bought the rights to the Tomb Raider franchise for $600 million. This is from Games Radar by Anne-Marie Osler. Amazon has reportedly bought the rights to the Tomb Raider franchise for the grand sum of $600 million. That's according to the website Fellowship of Fans, which says, quote, Embracer Group just sold their Tomb Raider rights to Amazon for a deal that we can exclusively reveal as being approximately a $600 million overall package, making it Amazon's second biggest purchase after purchasing the rights for The Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. The site appears to have a solid insight into Amazon's TV offerings, as it correctly predicted several early Rings of Power plot points months ahead of the show's release. Wow, the source doesn't specifically state the currency. We assume the figure is in USD. It's also unclear whether the deal includes games, movies, TV shows, and merchandise, or if it's only the film and TV rights. Though, the lofty sum that Amazon has apparently coughed up suggests that it's purchased the rights to the whole Tomb Raider IP. Of course, as this news hasn't come directly from Amazon, you should take it with a pinch of salt until we have official confirmation. Fascinating.
This thing's just been passed around.
No kidding. I guess it was last year at this point, we covered when Embracer Group bought pretty much the entire Western slate of Square Enix for $300 million, including the Tomb Raider IP, I believe including Deus Ex and a couple of other things. And, we saw one studio close. We're still waiting to see what happens to the rest of them. Eidos Montreal? Yeah. No, Crystal Dynamics, is working on a Tomb Raider game right now. And man, I'll just say whoever's running the financials over at Amazon, or whoever's running the financials at Amazon needs to be fired, and whoever's running it over at Embracer Group needs to be promoted, because they bought the entire Western slate of Square Enix and the IPs for $300 million, and now they're just selling Tomb Raider alone for $600 million. Okay. All right.
And this has been sold a lot for a game we've seen 3 entries into. And for $600 million in recent times, yeah. And $600 million, it's a lot.
It's a lot of money.
It's a lot of money. I don't think it's worth that much.
No, not just
not
for this
at all.
IP.
I know it's Amazon though, and they're like richer than they ever needed to be in their entire existence as a company. So this is probably not really, as far as a cost to them, it's not really that high, considering how much money they make.
It's just, I think this IP is strange to do it. There's also been reports that there's a TV show in the works with Amazon that has already been announced. I think it's got like a producer or a director or a writer or something tied to it. We'll see how that goes. There were quotes flying around of like Amazon wants like an MCU level universe with Tomb Raider. Don't do that. This is not the IP that it goes with that. I mean, we've seen multiple adaptations of Tomb Raider in recent-ish memory. We had the Tomb Raider movie just a few years ago that kind of just flopped in general. And then,
whenever you bring that up, I just like am always reminded that, that existed.
Yeah.
Nothing. I heard nothing.
Did not work.
At all.
It did not work. And then the old movies with Angelina Jolie, cool, whatever. Those were what they were. I just don't think, I don't know if this IP, I haven't seen them, so I don't know.
They are, though.
Yeah, they probably are. I don't know if this IP has the ability to be adapted. I don't know if it's the one that we want to get behind. Now, I'm still in on Tomb Raider as games, but I'm not in on Amazon producing them or publishing them. Because we just haven't seen it before. So this makes me nervous for the future of Tomb Raider more than anything else we've seen so far. I'm personally hoping Crystal Dynamics' new game goes in a new direction. I think the realistic, gritty, dark space that they've been in is kind of tired at this point. And I would like to see maybe something more charismatic, maybe something more fun, jovial, more fantastical to enter the scope of Tomb Raider at this point, because even this picture that they have on the website of her with the bow and arrow, dirt all over her and stuff, like, I'm like, ugh, like, okay, all right, I guess this is where we're, like, I don't know, like, and, like, even me as a light Tomb Raider fan who enjoyed those first 2 games from Crystal Dynamics, I'm not jumping at the bit to see Lara Croft hit the big screen again. I'm not jumping at the bit to watch a Lara Croft TV show. I'm not excited at the idea of a Tomb Raider universe in any way. So, I don't know, Connor. Where are you at with all of this?
Not Amazon, as far as like getting into video games, just hasn't seemed to have worked so far. What have they really done? I always ask myself.
We got that Gollum game coming, I think.
And that looks bad. No one knows. I think everyone, even Lord of the Rings fans like myself, haven't really been like, oh, it's a Gollum game. You're like, why? Golem's a good character, but a video game of him and one that doesn't look good, you really aren't. You're not doing it. You're not selling it well. So I think this is a waste of money. I mean, I don't think they're really going to do anything good with it. If they do, nice, because Tomb Raider has been in that sad spot where the games have been good, but they haven't been getting lots of attention. I didn't even play anyone past the first one. You're the only one that has that I know.
The second one was so much better too.
Yeah, that's what I heard. And well, when you can't get people to buy your game, I think it's a matter of. I think it is, as you said, a matter of direction, because that grittiness worked when it came out, but it didn't keep people's attention. Maybe something more, not necessarily lighthearted, but not so serious. Maybe something in the vein of Uncharted, not as Indiana Jonesy as that one, taking it a different route completely. Because if you make a new Tomb Raider game act and be written the same way as an Uncharted game, it's going to be bad. At least it's not going to be bad. You're just going to constantly be like, oh, this is just Uncharted copy. And it's going to be hard to escape from that. So it is difficult. They're in a difficult spot where they have to find a way to change up how the game plays, how the tone is, and not have it be compared to Uncharted, because it's been ahead of them for quite some time now and has done it better than they have, unfortunately. But hey, I mean, like you said, I'm up for more Tomb Raider games. As long as it's good.
Yeah, jumping off the back of what you were saying with the Uncharted comparison there, I would really like to see just sort of a revamp of Laura as a character, at least when it comes to the games, where I kind of like the idea of like returning to Croft Manor as like a hub, and we have this really smart, sort of sarcastic, passive-aggressive Lara Croft who is really, really intelligent and putting pieces together and so forth. Whereas like this Laura that we've been exposed to over the last couple of years, in the first game, she's just kind of like stumbling around, like falling into these adventures. And I think it'd be more fun if she was intending to go on these adventures, and then we had a little more power, a little more strength behind the character of Lara Croft. I don't think we need realism in this franchise. I think it can go kind of wacky and crazy and exciting and so forth. So I don't know. We will see. But as always, it's a lot of wait and sees. But this is one where I go, I don't like the sound of this at all.
Let us fight dinosaurs again. Why not?
Dude, I would so be down for that. I would be down for that.
And then, like you just said, taking it in a wackier direction.
Yeah,
that's the kind of stuff they used to do, and that's what made them popular in the first place. I remember when I was younger and I was seeing people talk about Tomb Raider, that was the clip that always show up, her fighting the Velociraptor. I don't think it was a T-Rex. I'm pretty sure it was a Velociraptor. That's fun. That's cool.
She does fight a T-Rex at some point.
Yeah, okay. I thought she had. And then she teamed up in one game, a weird Tomb Raider game where she was like with a ancient warrior of some kind.
Oh, you're talking
what are you?
The top-down like twin stick shooter game or whatever. Yeah. That was a thing that happened. They made two of those, I think.
Yeah, I think they did. And Tomb Raider, the one that you talked about, the remake, it had the crazy samurai people. It was that weird kind of stuff. It was cool,
but it felt like it didn't feel intentional. I would kind of like it to feel a little more intentional this time from the perspective of Lara Croft. I don't know. I feel like almost like we could go a little animated. Like, let's stop trying to be so photorealistic with this franchise. Let's really pivot and have a new take on it. One that's a little more fun. One that's a little more. I like the idea of this like really rich, really smart woman who's like going around finding adventures and finding ancient treasures and cursed cities and so forth. And she sort of handles it with sort of that English sarcasm that I think sort of popularized this character that we've just have had to pull away from in recent years. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Moving on to our next topic, which is just a catch-all of a bunch of news stories that happened this week. I guess first we'll start with EA and Respawn delaying Jedi Survivor. They went to Twitter with this, if I can get it to load, with this statement. For the last 3 years, the Jedi team here at Respawn has poured its collective heart and soul into Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and we are proud to say the next chapter in the tale of Cal Kestis is content complete. We are now focused entirely on the final stage, bug fixes, to enhance performance, stability, polish, and most importantly, the player experience. Jedi Survivor is a direct response to the feedback from our community, delivering expansive destinations to explore, evolved combat and traversal, and of course, the continuation of Cal and BD's story. Making this game has truly made us a better team, and we have pushed ourselves at every level to make this the Star Wars sequel our fans expect from Respawn and Lucasfilm Games. In order for the team to hit the Respawn quality bar, provide the team the time they need, and achieve the level of polish our fans deserve, we have added 6 crucial weeks to our release schedule. Star Wars Jedi Survivor will now launch globally on April 28th. Thanks to EA and Respawn for giving us the time to deliver the best experience to our players, and to all of you for your understanding. May the Force be with you, Stig, and the Star Wars Jedi team. And then I guess we'll just stay here for just a quick second, Connor. Jedi Survivor, sure, delay it if you want. The biggest problem with Fallen Order was the bugs, was the glitches, was the game didn't look super great. It wasn't super polished. It was a little content light in terms of the side quests and side things you can do. And it seems that Jedi Survivor seems to be a huge expanse on that initial formula that they presented in Fallen Order. And then hopefully this time it's just, oh, but this time it's polished. This time it's our official stamp on Star Wars. Respawn is a great dev studio. I freaking love them. And it broke my heart to see just how unpolished Fallen Order was and sort of how half-baked some of the ideas in that game were.
Yeah, I think this delay is great for a couple of reasons. First of all, as you said, it's good to hammer out details to make sure that when your game comes out, it's good. You know, as you said, I wasn't very aware of the bugs that game had because I played it 2 years after it was released. So I kind of was able to skip that part of the experience. But
did you play the PS4 or PS5 version?
PS4.
Okay.
And it did have some bugs, but it wasn't so many that it was just game breaking constantly.
Yeah, even when I played I replayed it for the PS5, and I was still having issues.
Yeah. I think we talked about it. You had way more issues than I did in my experience. So maybe my experience was just very unique. But make sure you get those bugs out of the way so you can deliver a better game. Because Star Wars Jedi Survivor is something that I've been really looking forward to. Because after playing the Fallen Order game, I enjoyed my experience with it. I liked it. But overall, I was hoping, I was excited for what came next because I saw a lot of ways they could improve on it. The combat, the enemy types, the level design, the story itself, especially the story itself. It only had places to go up. And so you really have, a chance to make an amazing game here. And rushing it will help no one. It'll just hurt you. And not to mention, now, this is the best part of all this, by the way. I can now play the Resident Evil 4 remake instead of doing this because it's actually spaced out. So I saw this. I was like, oh, thank you. Because that Resident Evil 4 showcase really got me wanting to, play it because it looks really good. And I was going to still hold it off for this game, but thankfully having that space between big releases is a nice thing.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. Jedi Survivor launching a week before Resident Evil 4 was really detrimental to me. I was like, fuck, man, these are two of my most anticipated games of the year. And they're a week apart. All right, now there's a month between the two, which I'm personally excited for. Something, however, that sucks is now Jedi Survivor is launching the same day as guess which other game, Connor?
I didn't know. What other game?
Horizon Call of the Mountain.
Oh, this is funny as hell. Do you think that Respawn knew what they were doing?
No, they were just...
Yeah, maybe they were like...
They absolutely were 100% were like, hey, yeah, we can get this game out on time, but it would be a lot better if we had 6 weeks. Can we get 6 weeks? Great.
Totally. That's what they thought. But maybe that 6-week number was someone just thinking to themselves, oh, it's so funny that Horizon's screwed out by other games whenever it comes out. And they're like, oh, wait, maybe we can do that and piggyback off of that curse they have. So... who knows? Maybe it's just some superstitious people.
I feel like something is launching the same time as Burning Shores. Do I have that right? Is it Call of the Mountain or is it Burning Shores coming out? It might be Burning Shores.
Either way, it's still
the
fun.
DLC. Let me see. Yeah, it's still really funny. Horizon just can't seem to catch a break.
April 19th.
Burning Shores release date.
April 19th.
Is April 19th. Oh, okay. So it's 9 days after Horizon is when Jedi Survivor comes out, which is funny.
Well, when's Call of the Mountain coming out?
I think it's a launch title for PSVR 2, so it'll be out later this month.
Yeah, it is. Oh, never mind.
Yeah. So moving on though to some more industry news. Connor, we saw a lot of shutdowns happening and a lot of cancelizations and so forth happening throughout the industry. Apex Legends Mobile was shut down after only launching last year, which is insane because it seemed to get like a really good response and people were playing it and enjoying it, but I guess it just wasn't enough for what EA was expecting. So that game is closing down May 1st, 2023. And then Knockout City is also coming down. Season 9 will be their final season. All servers will shut down on June 6th. It is important to note for Knockout City, the game is not dying outright. You'll still be able to buy and play it. It's just if you want to play online with your friends, you'll have to set up a peer-to-peer custom game server, which is nice that they're still leaving that option available for fans of Knockout City. There were also a number of other games that are getting shut down and canceled. I saw last year's Rumbleverse is getting shut down, which is insane because that game literally just came out 8 months ago, something like that. So it didn't even make it a full calendar year before Epic Games, of all people, shut it down, which is really strange to me because Epic, you made Fortnite. Fortnite, not a game that hit at first, but then evolved and grew into the phenomenon that it is right now. So I'm shocked that Epic pulled the plug on that so quickly. And then something that I want to kind of recap all of this with is an article from VGC by Tom Ivan is reporting EA has reportedly canceled a single-player game codenamed Titanfall Legends. According to Bloomberg, the game was in development at EA Studio Respawn Entertainment, where a team of about 50 people had been working on it. Codenamed Titanfall Legends, the project was reportedly being led by creative director Mohamed Alavi until he left the company in January 2022. Respawn announced in 2021, July, that it was developing a new single-player adventure game set in a unique universe, which Alavi was attached to. Alavi was a senior designer on the Titanfall series and the narrative design director on Apex Legends during an 11-year spell at Respawn. Prior to that, he spent 7 years at Infinity Ward, where he designed iconic Call of Duty missions, including No Russian and All Gillied Up. Following his departure, it was claimed that Respawn's game was a first-person shooter built around mobility and style that was planned for release by 2025. News of the game's cancellation was reportedly announced internally by EA on Wednesday. At the same time, EA publicly announced the cancellation of Apex Legends Mobile, Battlefield Mobile, as well as the closure of mobile studio Industrial Toys and a delay for Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Staff who were working on the canceled single-player game who can't be repositioned in other teams will be given severance packages and laid off, Bloomberg reported. So really, EA is now facing sort of the effects, the aftershocks of the tech industry boom that we saw in the pandemic that is now being pulled back, alongside a recession is in the midst of happening. So instead of the mass layoffs that we saw from places such as Microsoft and Amazon and others, EA seems to just be canceling games, scaling back projects, and repositioning employees where they can, and where they can't, sorry, but we have to make choices here. Okay, I'm not like offended at that. Business is business, and you got to do what you got to do in that. But it's just crazy to see all of these games get knocked out all at once. Obviously, most of them are from EA, but I also want to pull up. There was a tweet I saw. Where was it? I put it in the chat. That's what I did with it. So let me pull this up, in which it sort of recapped all of the online games that have been canceled or killed in the last few weeks, even. In just the most recent weeks, we even covered it, I want to say, 2 weeks ago when we covered Avengers closing? So dead games in recent weeks: Crossfire X, Back for Blood, Marvel's Avengers, Rumbleverse, Apex Legends Mobile, Battlefield Mobile, Echo VR, Knockout City, Crime Site, Dragon Quest, The Adventure of Die, A Hero's Bond, and most tragically, Babylon's Fall, which was infamously terrible at launch. Connor, what does this mean for the industry? Where are we at as a collective gaming? Where are we right now?
Obviously, there's the Titanfall Legends game. That's a big disappointment, first of all, because Titanfall is a game that deserves more eyes on it and more
Man,
respect. By
man,
far. No.
man, let me tell you, man, as someone who was a fan from Titanfall from the jump, as soon as it was announced and released, I was all about it. Thank you so much, my friend, had actually purchased for me the Xbox 360 version of Titanfall 1, in which I put hundreds of hours into. Titanfall is such a disrespected franchise because it was easily one of the best shooter franchises we've ever seen, and it should have been the big thing. It should have been everywhere, and it just never connected for a number of reasons, and it's just unfortunate.
It didn't connect for a number of reasons. Partly was the masses generally just not taking to it, which is disappointing because we see with Call of Duty nowadays with how they've increased mobility. I don't know if it was in the game itself, but people could do that either as a glitch. Do you remember that? If it was a glitch or whether it was just a natural thing you could do in the game in the new Call of Duty multiplayer, jumping far distances.
Oh no, it was a thing that like mobility was just now. The community has found glitches and stuff to where they can jump and dive farther. But there was the whole Future series of Call of Duty where they were in the future and they were wall running and triple jumping and doing all kinds of crazy shit.
And objectively, did it worse than Titanfall.
Yeah, they did.
People liked it. And anybody who's played Titanfall actually, sat down, put a controller in their hands, and played it.
Perfect.
They always love it. And I think the big issue at the end of the day, though, is EA not giving it enough support. How much stuff came out for Titanfall 2 or Titanfall 1 on the multiplayer end of things? Basically nothing. They didn't do any.
There was some support for Titanfall 2.
But they so much little to what they could have done. Like, how did they make any new? I don't remember them making any new.
There was maps. There was modes. They had a whole wave-based survival mode.
But was it mechs? Was it new mechs? Was it like crazier maps that weren't just?
I don't know if mechs ever got introduced. There might have been one or two new mechs introduced, but there were maps. There were maps that came, I believe, free. I believe everything was even free for Titanfall 2. It's just remember the problem with Titanfall 2 is it launched in between Battlefield and Call of Duty, whichever one's launched that year. I forget. I think it was Battlefield 4 and Call of Duty. Who gives a fuck? And they just placed it right smack dab in the middle of those two games, and it got eaten alive because Titanfall 1, you'll remember, failed to take off because it was an Xbox One exclusive, and the Xbox One launch was bad. Like, it did not take off correctly. So Titanfall has just never had an opportunity to prove itself.
And it seems like any attempt to give it a chance to just fails for one reason or another.
But it shows how much that Titanfall should have worked because Apex Legends works.
Yeah, it does. I mean, that's just less mobility, but people like more mobility. That's the big thing in games nowadays, and it just still didn't take off. And it made the right decisions. On the development side of things, it did everything right, and it was screwed over by circumstance, like you said, management that could have been better, and bots as well. I mean, not bots, hackers. Because I remember recently they came into a big issue where people were hacking the game, they were crashing it.
It's almost impossible to play Titanfall 2 right now, multiplayer. You can't.
It's incredibly stupid, but maybe we'll see something with Titanfall in the future. One thing I think we'll be seeing less of, which is the other end of this, these wave of cancellations, is less games as service games. I think you're seeing the limitations of it since we've had so many that just keep dying over and over and over again. Even new ones that haven't even been around that long. We had Marvel's die recently. It seems like that's the way that each of these games go, inevitably. Maybe they'll have their time in the sun for a short period of time, but it just goes away. Because at the end of the day, it's just not something. It's just not a kind of game that keeps people's attentions for very long. Which I get why people thought it would, because it's a game that they constantly update. But for some reason, they just aren't working out. They don't keep you invested.
And we've seen so many iterations where it has worked. You think of the Grand Theft Auto 5s. You think of Destiny 2. You think of on a smaller scale Division. And Fortnite and so forth, and guys like these, and Apex Legends and so forth. So my question to you, Connor, is it that games as service aren't working, or the idea of what a multiplayer game is changing? I bring to you a Bloomberg article from Jason Schreier where they talk about Halo has been facing with Halo Infinite being a games as service game that just didn't work, and they just had a great mechanics, great multiplayer, really fun campaign twists and so forth. If it was in any other generation, I've said it before, Halo Infinite would be considered a great video game. But because it's in the era of games as service games where you need a constant stream of content, new content to keep players engaged, it failed because that team is not equipped to deal with that type of gameplay. And we're seeing, reported DLC, single player DLC getting canceled. Where Halo as a franchise, may be rebooted recently. It's really like they're talking about just a dramatic restructure of Halo as a whole. So I ask you, Connor, would you call Knockout, like, with all of that in mind, like, is the question all of these games tried to be games of service and failed, or is the question all of these games were multiplayer games that like tried to have a tail to them and maybe it worked or maybe it didn't? You think back on Outriders from 2021, I believe that game came out, where they came out and they said, hey, we are not a games of service game. We are a game you are meant to play, have fun with your friends, and then put it down. They eventually did come out with some expansions and some DLC, so forth, so some post-launch support for it. But at the end of the day, they were like, hey man, this game is just what it is. It's the box product and the box product alone. We would love for you to play as much as possible, and it found some success in that, obviously, or else they wouldn't have done DLCs and expansions. Knockout City, I don't remember 100%, but I don't think Knockout City was intended to be a multiplayer service game, a games of service game, a long life-lasting game. I think they were like, hey, we're going to make this game. It's really cool. It's fun. Come check it out. And it found an audience, and it connected with players. So now I ask you, was Knockout City a failure? I don't know. I feel like maybe it was a success. Obviously, there's failures. Obviously, there's examples of things that didn't work. Marvel's Avengers is a key one, where the game just came out broken. It was wanting to be two different games at the same time, and it didn't have the content rollout that it needed to have. I think Halo Infinite is a very similar case of this, where they just didn't have the content afterwards to back up the type of game that they wanted to be. But do we live in a space now where a multiplayer game can live and die just like any other game you play, where you pick it up, you play it for a little while, and then you put it down?
Be honest, I don't really know. It's almost like it's a coin flip sometimes about whether they succeed or not. I just don't think it's, as a model, it doesn't seem overall to be viable enough, because you mentioned some of the ones that do work: Apex Legends, Fortnite, what other games you can pull out of your ass?
Apex Legends, Fortnite, Destiny, GTA 5.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but are these seem like, almost at this point, considering how many of these live games of service games have failed after a while, seems like maybe those are just the exception. Every now and then you'll have one that really takes, but for the most part, it's just a way to make games that is not, viable in the long run for most of them. It's like you have to it's not like lightning in a bottle, but it is something that you have to be very, lucky to just have enough people get eyes on it and play it consistently, and have the proper updates to make the game more interesting. And just sometimes that just doesn't even take at the end of the day. It's just whatever the coin toss is, and some of them win, some of them lose, and now we're seeing a lot of them lose. I
mean, I see what you're saying in that, and I agree with it to a point, but I feel like we're now coming into a new era of multiplayer gaming, where there's a little bit more minutia to the conversation now, where you sit around and you look and you go, okay, yeah, this game is a game as a service. It wants to be here for 10 years or whatever, like Halo Infinite was being pitched as a 10-year plan with Halo Infinite. I don't even think we're going to be able to see any of that come to fruition. Destiny 2, however, seems to be a great games of service game that has kept its fan base happy for many, many years. Elder Scrolls Online, obviously an MMO, so it's a little bit different in that case. We've seen MMOs last for multiple decades. You think of World of Warcraft, and now even Elder Scrolls seems to be lasting a long time. Final Fantasy 14 in that conversation as well. But is every single multiplayer game that comes out that has a tail to it now a games of service game? Or are we now finding sort of a middle ground where they're saying, hey, yeah, we'll support this game for as long as players are playing, but as soon as they're done, yeah, we're going to shut it down and we're going to move on to our next game. Every single player game that comes out, when we stop getting support for those single player games, we don't count that as a failure. we count that as a success, that it even got a tail, that it even, kept us around for longer than its initial release date. Well, I think now we're seeing that with multiplayer games. Is it possible to have multiplayer-only games that have tails to them, but they're not the identity of that developer? They're capable of going, okay, we made that game, we shipped it, we packaged it, people liked it, so we made some DLC, we made an expansion, we had a couple new maps and seasons of Battle Pass things to kind of pad all that out, and maybe even have a small team break out and continue that. But our main team is going to be working on our next project, which is Knockout City 2, which is Rumbleverse 2, or something else that you will see inspirations of. Maybe Knockout City turns into, I don't know, Home Run City, and it's a baseball game that it's a competitive baseball shooter of some kind, instead of dodgeball. Are we now in an era where you are not single player or multiplayer, and you can be a little bit of both? Are we now in an era where you're not games as service or just a traditional game? You can now be somewhere in the middle.
If there's a nice line to be on, it hasn't really been found yet. Maybe this is, and that, if that is, the solution is just a trial and error situation. Yeah. And at some point, there's going to be a nice balance that's struck, and then everyone's going to copy that balance, and we're going to have games that last longer. But
I feel you, and that's where the future goes. But I would argue, you say it hasn't been found. I'm saying we're in the process of finding it right now.
But
I wouldn't call Outriders a failure.
No, but it's definitely not, something that's, it's not the ideal.
It's not Fortnite, but only Fortnite can be Fortnite.
Yeah. The core issue that remains is these things cost money. They cost time. They cost manpower. Mm-hmm. And like I was saying before, games as service seems to be kind of dying. And maybe this is a big reason why. It's because, if there is a line to be found, some way that we can make it work, do companies actually want to spend time getting to that point, spending all this money, going through these trials and errors, as we've already seen, a bunch of them have failed. People, at some point, I feel like people are going to say, these companies are going to say, okay, it's too risky. It's not an easy venture. So let's, pull back and go to single player games again, with some having multiplayer aspects to it. It's in a rocky place, and as someone that doesn't really play games as service,
you
it's hard
say
for me
that,
to
but
say
EA is out here canceling single player games with Titanfall.
Yeah, they are. But then again, that's Titanfall, which has already, had a rocky history of being shattered.
It's a code name Titanfall Legends, so it was going to be tied to Apex Legends, which is EA's most successful multiplayer game right now.
Mm-hmm.
And continues to bring in crowds and continues to have people checking in every few months or so to see what the new season holds for them and so forth. You said twice games of service as a model is dying. Do you really believe that's true?
Not necessarily dying in the sense of it is dead, it is going to be dying. It's just, as we just covered, it's not as viable as we think. So at some point it can just be like, okay, we're done with this. It's not going to work. We don't want to spend the money on it. And, that seems to be leaning to that side of things as opposed to it being better. Because, when's the last time a live service game came out that really, grabbed people and changed up the landscape? It's been a while from my knowledge.
Changed the landscape? Been a while, yeah, I would agree. But, I think obviously it's Call of Duty, so Call of Duty's at a level to where it's going to find success. These games are just also really hard to make. And it's easy to point to so many different failures, but I think that's because a new business model has been found within the last 7 years, 10 years. And I think it's an interesting route to continue exploring. I think as long as the Fortnites, as long as the Apex Legends, as long as the Call of Duty Warzones exist, I think everyone will be constantly trying to figure out how can we keep this alive? How can we keep it going? And I think there's a range of success stories we have where you look at, I don't know, even games like No Man's Sky, which came out and, were, beaten in the streets for so long, only to bounce back and come out and, turn that whole story around and look at where No Man's Sky is today, winning game awards over at Jeff Keighley's show every year. You look at, Fortnite, which launched, pivoted real hard into Battle Royale, and then found unprecedented success that we continue to still see and explore. And Fortnite has become its own platform, not so much just a multiplayer game with friends, but something that you can hang out in and build and create and have these giant events where, players are going to Travis Scott concerts and they're getting trailers for new Star Wars movies inside Fortnite. And then, you look at, I think, tried and true examples like Apex Legends, where they're giving you multiple modes. They're giving you, different things to change up the gameplay and find success and new characters and things that you can jump in and play and experience at any time. I just think when we look at examples, and I keep coming back to Knockout City, where I don't think Knockout City was trying to be a games of service game. I think Knockout City was just trying to be a fun multiplayer game. And then it turned out that, it found more success than anybody was expecting. So they, brought that out for, when did that game come out? 2021, 2020? And so it found, success for over a year. I think it's just now we live in a realm where you are either a game that is going to stick around for years and years, or you're a game that will stick around for maybe a year, maybe. I think now we've entered the conversation where certain games can be in that conversation of this will last until the end of the generation, or even past that generation. You think of Destiny 2. And then there are games that will last up until the generation. You think of I don't know, anthems. Where it's just like, okay, we're gonna keep, or Avengers is probably a better example than Anthem, where we're gonna keep supporting it, we're gonna keep trying, we're gonna keep going, but it doesn't have the gas to keep us going past that. And then you see games that are like, hey, we're just trying to make it to 3 months. Like, if we can keep part of the conversation for 3 months, that's a success story, because people got time. People don't have time to be invested for these games for ever and ever and ever. You look at multiverses. And I would not be surprised tomorrow if this episode drops on Monday at 8 a.m. and then at 2 p.m. it's announced that Multiverses is done. It would not surprise me. But at the same time, Multiverses found enough success to where I could see that game lasting another year with content drops and things and people being excited. Nickelodeon All-Stars Brawl, which came out and we played it for a weekend and then stopped and haven't gone back to it. But that game has had multiple content drops. That game has found a base, has found an audience that people care about. And so, like, I wouldn't be surprised if they were like, hey, we're done with this game, but guess what? We're going to make another one. And how exciting would that be to be, okay, now we've learned and now we can create a baseline foundation game that can last longer than some of these other long-winded multiplayer games have, as opposed to a games of service game. Does that kind of make sense with how I'm pitching that?
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's very rocky at the end of the day. And I'm just,
What about it makes it rocky? Just that it doesn't stick around?
Yeah, it just doesn't stick around. I mean,
because there was an era where a multiplayer game would come out. You think of Halo, you think of Call of Duty, you think of Quake and Doom and all these things where these games had multiplayers and then they shut down and we moved on and we got sequels. Is the idea of a sequel in a multiplayer game dead? I don't think so.
No.
Yeah, like, I think it's just there are different tiers of this. And, would everybody like to be long-lasting like Fortnite? Yes. But is that attainable? No. So maybe we meet somewhere in the middle, where we are not the game that you play for a weekend. We are the game you play for 3 months. That sounds fun to me. And in that time, we got...
Yeah.
And then in the 6 months that we were able to keep our game in the public eye, we got a couple of content drops out, and that extended our life. And, but now, we've plateaued and it's time to move on or something like that. I think the conversation is more nuanced and more interesting if we think about it in terms of how things used to be and how things could be.
I guess we'll have to see what the next big live service game is and how well that goes.
We will indeed.
I hope Multiverses survives, because if I see people I see people play it all the time. Popular to a degree, but at the same time, it hasn't
entered my ecosphere in a while.
Well, maybe that's a sign then.
Maybe, but there's still potential for that to live. I don't know. It's an interesting conversation to have. Connor, we've gone on for quite a while now, and I think it's time that we went ahead and wrapped up our news segment because I have been playing the Dead Space remake. So if you're listening to the podcast on YouTube, stick around, or you can find the breakout version of the review out on youtube.com/2pennygames right now. What's poppin', players? Welcome back to a 2-Penny Games review. This time, the Dead Space remake. I am your host, Tavin Bothel, here with my good friend and fellow Dead Space connoisseur, Connor Elliott.
I think connoisseur is a strong word. Enjoyer. Dead Space enjoyer.
Dead Space enjoyer is probably a little bit better. Ladies and gentlemen, I have been playing the Dead Space remake. I'll go ahead and say I haven't started, but I am, enclosing on the third act, and I'm very well versed in everything Dead Space right now. Connor, are you playing the Dead Space remake?
I am not, and I have no
You're
intention as of right now. I'm already playing Resident Evil for the game club that we'll have a review for at the end of the month, possibly, maybe even a little bit earlier. So as far as survival horror, especially with Resident Evil 4 remake coming on the end, on the back end of things, which I'm more interested in.
Yeah,
I'm not really, looking forward to playing it.
Right. However, you did just last year, I believe, or maybe the year before, played the original Dead Space.
Yeah, about at least a year ago, I played it. I did that, and then I didn't beat Dead Space 2 for some reason. I just fell off, but I basically, got to the end.
Okay.
I should beat that game back.
I was a big fan of Dead Space back in the day when it was, big and relevant and so forth. And then, I played all 3 games, but I haven't really touched any of them really in about a decade. I remember I picked up the original Dead Space around the same time that you were playing, but I didn't make it out of Chapter 1. So I would even hesitate to call that playing it. I have, however, made it quite deep into Dead Space Remake here. And let me say, I'm in an interesting place with this game. First of all, I like it. I love it, actually. I think it's I think it's fantastically made, and I think it's phenomenal in all of the ways that Dead Space is phenomenal. If you're a fan of the original game, you should absolutely play this game. Let me start with that right there. I just think there's 2 ways to talk about the Dead Space remake that I think is very, very interesting. There is how is it as a remake, and then how is it as a video game in 2023. I think both conversations end with, it's good. It's just the conversation of how is it as a remake ends with, it's awesome. Any complaints I have about this game here really are rooted in design ethos from 2008. So is it really fair to level these 2023 criticisms at a game that's almost 15 years old? I don't know. That's a conversation we can have here on this podcast right now. However, I will say from moment-to-moment gameplay, from the added story elements to this game, to the updated graphics, the updated sounds, and the improved atmosphere and just overall quality of the game, this is the definitive way to play Dead Space. And I think it straight up just replaces the original game. We're in an interesting place with remakes in general right now. You think of Final Fantasy VII Remake. You think of the Resident Evil 2 Remake. You think of Last of Us Part 1 Remake, in which we've now gotten a variety of remakes, and then even now with this Dead Space remake, that run the gambit of the type of remake we can get and we can experience. Where with Resident Evil 2, you see a very traditional remake in that this is the exact same game again, but in a new format that will play better to modern day audiences. Where if you go back and play the original Resident Evil 2, yeah, you're still exploring the Raccoon City Police Department. You're still going to that underground lab. And it still may be scary, but it doesn't look very good anymore. The tank controls aren't super accessible and fun to, go back and explore as they were back in the day. Whereas now with the Resident Evil 2 remake, that is a 2019 game, playable and accessible and fun from front to end, on top of the fact that it is very true to the original. And then you look at something like Final Fantasy VII, where they straight up just gave you a different game. There's a lot of there. It pretty much gives you the same story up until a point. No spoilers, but up until a point. But there's nothing about that game that you can't necessarily look at 1-to-1 and be like, that same game. You wouldn't be remiss for thinking it's a different game. And then you have things like The Last of Us Part 1, where the gameplay still holds up. The game is still accessible. The game is still good. And you can get it on modern consoles, but they just wanted to update it and make it look prettier. Okay, sure. That works. Here, we have something that sits more in the middle, where arguably Dead Space 1 still holds up. Dead Space 1 is still a good game. It's a little harder to get your hands on because we haven't seen any real ports outside of its generation of consoles that it originally came out on. But the core gameplay of Dead Space still works. You would agree with this, Connor? The core gameplay still works?
Yeah, Dead Space is a game, that and 2, that I picked up, and it works so well in a modern setting. It plays amazingly, it runs smoothly, and it looks good as well. Like, visually, it's actually kind of, like, amazing how well it holds up for a 2009 game. Now, I play on a PC.
I was going to say, I disagree with that, because my limited time of replaying the original game 2 years ago or whatever, I thought the game actually looked a little cartoony. And I found it hard to immerse myself in that world. But continue.
Yeah, I never found that to be the case. I thought it was, it looked really nice. The backgrounds were great. The environment was great. The necromorphs are designed incredibly. I mean, they became iconic when they came out, and they still are today. I mean, obviously people are, wanting more Dead Space stuff, which is why we got this remake, and it's done so well. And now we're even seeing some discussions of, hey, new Dead Space game. It's time for it. It's a game that's earned its stripes.
Yeah. So I want to say Dead Space Remake is a very tried and true traditional remake. However, it adds certain things and changes certain things to make it exciting for returning players and accessible for new players. There are elements of the original game that I know for a fact don't hold up because they weren't good when the game came out. I'm thinking specifically of the asteroid shooting segments in the original game, or the zero G gravity jumping around segments, which were awkward and discombobulating in the original game. All of that has been updated. This is almost more like the Resident Evil 1 GameCube remake, where it's the same game, but we're changing a few things around to make it better. And I feel that way with this game right here. First of all, I want to get to my two big positives about the game. The first of which is something that I think is actually truly revolutionary for survival horror as a genre. And that is, they've talked about in the marketing for this game, something called the Intensity Director. The Intensity Director is an under-the-hood system that is not explained in the game, and the player doesn't need to know about it, but if you research the game and stuff, it tells you where, as you're walking through environments that you've already been through, on return visits or backtracking or just exploring areas that you couldn't get to before, there is something like 1,200 created events that could happen. So, for example, if you walk through a room that you've already been through before, something could change. Something could be different about that room, whether it's the lights are flickering now, or the lights are completely turned off now, or Connor, you're familiar with how the necromorphs travel through the vents and, will burst out of vents and surprise you, and it's very jump scary in that way. Well, now they'll have it sometimes when you walk by a vent, there's a fan in the vent, and the fan will start whirring up and getting excessive, just to kind of dial up that tension and keep you immersed in the environments. Sometimes enemies will spawn in and they'll be there where they weren't before. I've walked through rooms where there's nothing going on, and then came literally I went through a door, went, oh, there's nothing in here, turned around, went back through that door, and there was an enemy right in my face. And I went, oh, fuck, where the fuck did you come from? Or sometimes I'll walk by a vent and a necromorph will burst out of a vent, or it'll hop through a vent that a necromorph burst out of earlier in that play session. And it's just a way to kind of keep you immersed in the game and keep you excited. It could even, I mentioned it ranged to the lights are flickering. Sometimes you'll walk through a room and you'll hear in another part of the ship somebody getting torn apart, and they're screaming and dying. And it's just a way to kind of keep that atmosphere, keep that tension alive. in ways where you look at other survival horror games like Resident Evil 2 Remake, which is my favorite survival horror game of all time. And you remember like exploring the Raccoon City Police Department, but once you cleared the threat out of a room, that room no longer held tension for you. You knew you were safe. Here with the Intensity Director, you never truly know if you're safe.
You see, that's something that I've experienced in Resident Evil, the remake that we've been playing, because they do the same exact thing, and it really makes those survival horror games a lot scarier because you never know when you're going to be safe. You never have that comfort. Because things are going to burst through the windows, new enemies spawned, so you're going to have to deal with those now. Sometimes you get items.
But Connor, in that, it's scripted.
It is scripted.
It's like this room is safe until I leave the mansion and come back. Here, it's literally like, I walked away for 5 minutes and came back. Like, I'm still in the same story beat. Like, I'm still in the same instance, which I think is just way better, and I hope it goes into every survival horror game going forward.
Yeah, I agree. It makes it scarier.
And it's complemented by the devs went ahead and they've recreated the Ishimura. A lot of it is the same. Most of it is the same. The layouts in the rooms and the hallways are all the same. Which actually leads to a criticism I have, again, of the original Dead Space, where it just feels a little too linear. But they've made it to where you can now travel from one end of the Ishimura all the way to the other at any point of the game. As you're unlocking doors, of course. So, like, as you're progressing through the story and you start unlocking different areas of the ship, like medical, like hydroponics, like the crew deck, and so forth, you can go back to those areas that you've already been, where the Intensity Director then takes over and says, now there's new guys coming. I was going through, I believe they call it mining, the mining section of the ship, in which there's this big elevator that, like, connects a bunch of floors together. And I had already been through the area, done all the story beats. The story doesn't even make you return to this area. But I was in there exploring, unlocking doors that were locked previously, and completing side quests, which have been added to the game. And it was a thing where, like, the elevator came up, the doors are see-through, and I could see a necromorph on the other side of the door. So the door opened up. The necromorph went, I'm here. Yeah. I killed the necromorph. Not a big deal. I saw it coming. I then took one step outside of the elevator, turned my camera to the left, checking my corner, and there was another necromorph waiting for me in the corner. So it was like a velociraptor in Jurassic Park. It was very much like a clever girl moment where, like, here's this one that's drawing my attention, and here's this one waiting to get a hit on me. Moments like that, gorgeous. It really, really adds a level of tension that the original game just doesn't have. And I'll sing the praises of that mechanic till the day I die. I think it's fan-fucking-tastic. And being able to traverse the Ishimura at my free will adds to that and allows the Intensity Director to really shine in that way. So I'm really, really appreciative of that. Of course, the game looks great. It sounds great. It feels really good to play. I'll say there's very specific things that I remember. I don't know if this is true, but I remember them feeling better in the original game. The stomp specifically, the iconic Dead Space stomp, doesn't feel as satisfying as it did back in the day. But maybe that's my rose-tinted glasses on the original game. I feel the same way about the plasma cutter, which is the iconic main weapon in your arsenal. Felt better in the original game, to my memory of it. I can't confirm or deny if that's true or not. It's just what I remember.
Right.
The story has also been altered to reflect Dead Space's universe. You know, Dead Space was a huge IP when it came out. It spawned multiple sequels and spin-off games and comic books and TV shows. And, you know, they really flushed out the world of Dead Space after the success of the first game. And the changes in story have been made to reflect that. Where, you know, unitology as a concept wasn't really, like, a huge thing in the original game. Like, Connor, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's mentioned, but it's not like unitologists aren't the bad guy.
If I remember correctly, they are. I think there were audio stuff that you could find that was like referencing that the decisions made to lead to the disaster of the Ishimura were because unitologists were like, oh, this is a religious symbol, so we got to bring it up. That was like a back end thing that was going on. The issue is that I played, like I said, I played Dead Space 2. I played it directly after 1,
Yeah.
so it's kind of hard to scan that one. The Church of Unitology. What is it called again? Unitology. I wonder what that's supposed to reference. The Church of Unitology becomes a lot more important in the second game. So it's kind of, I definitely probably have mixed some stuff up in between those two games, but I'm pretty confident that I remember them being in the first game and being the driving force behind the cause of everything.
Yeah, well, in here they take center stage, and they are like the direct thing. Where like I remember Dead Space 2 having a bigger focus on unitology, and I don't remember that being the case in the first game. And here it's undeniably the case in the first game, where the unitologists are the problem here. And all of that's great. Isaac has been given a voice. Finally, he's
for the first game.
For the first game, that is, it's the same voice actor who voiced him in 2 and 3, which is appreciated. Sometimes it's great and it feels natural and organic, and especially in all of the added side quests to the game. It feels really, really good to have him talk and have his own voice and so forth. But there are some times, and usually it's with the main quest, where for some reason it just feels like tacked on dialogue that like they're like, okay, well, this scene played fine in the original game. How do we get Isaac to say something here? All right, let's just insert this line where it still feels like characters are talking at Isaac, and then he just has like a throwaway line. But I still like that more than him not saying anything at all. I think silent protagonists are the dumbest thing we as an industry could have ever done. I can't stand silent protagonists. So I really, really, really appreciate the extra effort that they went through to incorporate Isaac as a character into this game.
I mean, he's so much more forefront of a character in the second game that it was kind of a weird shock to see him talk and be a person as opposed to a mindless, protagonist.
Yeah. And then from there, Dead Space is Dead Space, where you have that core idea of cut off the limbs, everything's broken and you got to go fix it. And you're just trying to make your way through the game and survive it. There's been some smaller changes to sort of make the systems shine a little more in this game. For example, you would be remiss in thinking that the upgrade system is exactly the same. It is not. There are now added alternate modes for each weapon, which I know the weapons initially came with like a secondary fire thing, but you can now get upgrades to sort of improve or change them even more. There are now upgrade parts that you can find throughout the Ishimura and in the store, which I made the mistake of initially prioritizing buying power nodes, which are the upgrade currency in the game, instead of buying the upgrade parts. Ladies and gentlemen, don't do that. Buy the upgrade parts. They are a little more expensive, but when you bring them to a bit, they're little parts that sit in your inventory, so they do take up an inventory spot. Okay. But when you bring them to a bench, the bench takes them, and you get an extra power node out of them, and it unlocks new upgrade branches for each weapon or your suit or so on and so forth. That's all really, really cool and really interesting stuff. I like the upgrade trees better in this game than they were in the original one, which I remember in the original one there was like empty nodes that you would have to spend a power node on, but they didn't give you anything. It was just kind of like forcing you to waste a node. That's gone. Every upgrade means something now. The altered modes, such as the asteroid shooting mode, which I mentioned earlier, has now been... Huh?
You despised?
I despised. I hated it. It sucked. It was
it's no problem.
Annoying and frustrating. Has been changed to where you now exit the ship and go into zero gravity, and you go and like interact with one of the cannons, and then like you basically just like shoot some asteroids, but from Isaac's perspective. So it's the same aiming mechanic as it was in the core gameplay, and you basically train the cannon to fire for you, which is better. Still not great. I just think it changes it from being frustrating and annoying to now it's serviceable. Like, it's fine now. Zero Gravity, where in the original game you did this like really weird and awkward and clunky Superman leap, where now you've got the rocket boots like you do in Dead Space 2 and Dead Space 3.
Reversal was way too clunky in those scenarios comparatively to what Dead Space 2 would go on to do. So it only makes sense they would update that.
Yeah.
Just like they updated the protagonist.
And again, it's better than what we had before, but I don't like it. Like, meh. Like, it's fine. Okay, it's cool. It changes up the gameplay, but I find it kind of annoying, and it's still disorienting whenever you, like, turn a few times, and then you're like, all right, which way's the fucking ground again? I don't remember where the ground is. They do have a button that does recenter you, but it's just kind of slow, and I just find myself less engaged when I'm in 0G, as opposed to just being on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
Them reworking the Ishimura to where you can traverse it. They've also added extra little like locked off rooms and stuff that weren't in the original game. So for example, and this is very like Metroidvania, almost Resident Evil, but it's very light in this way. Where as you're progressing, your security clearance gets updated and upgraded as you go. So you start out with no security clearance, and then you get level 1, level 2, level 3. And as you traverse the Ishimura, you'll find doors and lockers and containers that are locked by certain security clearances. So like you'll find a level 1 door, and then you'll get level 1 security clearance, and then you'll open that door, and it'll be more ammo and supplies and stuff. But inside there, you'll find a locker that has a level 2 lock on it. So you're like, I gotta come back here when I get level 2 eventually and open up this level 2 locker to get whatever is inside. It's mostly just kind of optional. It's not like necessary to do it, and I've never found that the rewards for backtracking are substantial enough to justify the backtrack. But it's fun, and for those who want to go and explore and really find out the depths of the intensity director, that works really well as for that purposes. I enjoy all the extra side quests that they've added to the game. One, for example, it's all like just like tacked on added stuff, but I'm enjoying that it's here. Like it's clearly like not meant to be there. And what I mean by that is it totally breaks up the pacing of the main quest entirely, because almost every step of the main quest is, Isaac, we gotta go do this right now. We're all gonna die. You have to do this right now. And then I go, okay, yeah, that's cool. Or I'm going to go like hang out on another deck for 2 hours and find rig pieces from the captain to like upgrade my security clearance. Is that cool? Cool. And they're like, where have you fucking been? They're not like actually acknowledging that you've been gone for 2 hours, but I've been gone for 2 hours. In the middle of a quest that demanded my attention immediately. Which is a little awkward, but whatever. It's like it's a game. Like let it be a video game. But this is also given the opportunity to flesh out the world of Dead Space, specifically the story scenarios that happen in the first one. There's a really, really good side quest that flushes out the backstory of the Hunter, which was the sort of like it was the necromorph that had been experimented on by a crazy doctor that could regenerate. You remember the regenerating?
Yeah.
Necromorph?
So they gave a backstory to that one then, huh?
Yeah, they gave him a backstory, and it's actually interesting and engaging and fun to explore and get those little things. Again, these are small little things. They don't take much time. They don't take much effort, but it's nice that they're there. I appreciate that they're there.
Yeah.
And they very often lead you to some extra power nodes, get some extra ammo. You often have to spend a lot of ammo to do it, so how much extra are you really getting? But, it's fun, and I appreciate that it's there, and it gives me reason as a Dead Space veteran to be excited about what's around the next corner again.
Yeah, because the Ishimura is a really nice setting. It's a perfect setting for this kind of game. So, and one of the cool things is it's, obviously everything's already gone to shit. Everyone's dead. Everything's out of whack. But there's a big story that's there to be told. I remember they made an animated movie back in the day, Dead Space something. It wasn't that good.
Or something,
No, it was something. It was not good.
Yeah.
But it at least expanded on the idea of this whole, you're on this big, space rig that just has, a multitude of people on it that now are, all dead. What happened, during that? Because it's you've all watched zombie movies. In zombie movies, there's, the group of survivors here and there. They have the different, character types in those parties, and, their decisions lead to certain outcomes. It's a whole world that wasn't really delved too deep into in the first game. You know, it was to a certain extent, but only to like a kind of a need to know basis with some audio files to kind of supplement all that kind of stuff. So it's nice they added these side quests. That is a really good, you know, idea to improve the original game.
Yeah, yeah. And I guess this kind of leads into just my main critique of the game, and that is that it's a 2008 video game. Like, a lot of the environments kind of look the same. A lot of the level design is pretty linear, or just broken up by elevators, because back in the day, they were hiding loading screens with elevators. And so instead of, like, figuring out a way around that, we just kind of have elevators now. Like, it's not so much to hide a loading screen as it is now to just change from floor to floor. Okay, cool, whatever. Some of the combat, it feels, I don't know, just a little stiff, but again, it's a 2008 third-person shooter. So, like, am I really complaining about this? I don't know, like, because it worked back then, and it still mostly works now. I do appreciate, and I had forgot how many different enemy variants there were in this game.
Yeah, there's a good amount.
There's a lot. There's so many, in fact. And I had forgotten a lot of that, and I think a lot of them still work today. The boss fights don't work, and I don't know if they worked in the original or not, because so far, every boss fight has been tied to those mechanics that I talked about that I didn't like. So they're very different now, but they still don't really work. They're still kind of lame.
Yeah, the boss fights were not really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were. You kind of just shot a bunch of bullets into them.
Yeah,
that would usually be it.
Yeah, and that's still the case, where you're like, except instead of, like, now doing the Superman jump to, like, avoid projectiles, you're now just, like, holding the left stick a little bit and going, like, and then shooting a little bit, and you're like, all right, I shoot the yellow thing and it explodes, and then another thing jumps out at me and stuff. So, like, the boss fights aren't great, but they weren't great to begin with. So
yeah,
if my biggest complaint about Dead Space Remake is that it's too much like the original Dead Space, which is a classic survival horror game that kept the genre alive during the PS3 generation, is that really a complaint, or is that just, I don't know, what is, like, that, you know, that's a good thing also. Like, it's a double-edged sword where, like, you want it to be the same, but you also want it to be different. And it's just like, how much can we change before we change too much?
Sounds like it struck a good balance.
I think it has. I think this game is fantastic. I think it changes just enough to justify a full price. I think it changes enough for veteran players, even players like yourself, Connor, to pick this up and play it and spend your time with it. Whereas I struggled to find that justification for The Last of Us Part 1. If you are looking for the Dead Space experience again, it is back and bigger and better than ever before. I remember texting you my first night and being like, Connor, Dead Space is scary again.
It's
like,
very
it is genuinely scary. I have had so many moments of fear hit me. And again, it's because of this intensity director, where, like, the game never breaks tension. I mean, it breaks tension, but it never stops. Like, the atmosphere is always intact. It never, like, you're never bored playing it. Mm-hmm. You're always on the edge of your seat. I think this is phenomenal. I think it's fantastic coming from EA Motive. This makes me so excited for the Iron Man game that they have play on the books to develop next. The director of this game has said that they are more than willing to continue exploring the world of Dead Space, and I absolutely think they should. Does that mean that they should remake the second game or even the third game? I don't know. Personally, I think that they should take the series in their own direction and make a new Dead Space 2. One that is, I would like it to remain survival horror if this is the route we're going. Even though I personally always liked Dead Space 2 more than Dead Space 1. In today's era, I think it makes more sense to keep it survival horror as opposed to make it more of an action game. So I'm very interested to see where they take Dead Space from here. I think the reported sales of it already show that it's a major success, and I'm so excited about that because Dead Space is back, baby, and it's better than it's ever been. Connor, have I convinced you to give Dead Space Remake a try?
Unfortunately, Tavin, no.
Because damn it!
Listen, here's the thing. I would have fun with it. I really would. And maybe down the line I'll play it when I want to visit back to it again. But I just played it, and there's so many other games I want to play. Not even just single-player games, but also multiplayer games. Getting back into some of those. So, there's just... And new games are going to be coming out. Atomic Heart's right around the corner. I still haven't beaten Fire Emblem Engage. Just other things.
A lot of stuff to do right now. So, I don't blame you for that. But just keep it on your radar. Like, this is more than worth... This is absolutely worth revisiting. Like, I'm sure there's a bit of you that's like, I just did that. But I promise you, this is worth going back for. Where, even in our Last of Us Part 1 remake, where I was like, I like it because Last of Us is great. But Connor, you and I just played this, so there's no point in you going back and playing it.
Even though I would like it, because it's Last of Us, because I love that game too. But
it's not more Last of Us, where this is undeniably Dead Space again, but they've done more to it. It's not just Dead Space again. Like, there's more to it than meets the eye, and I'm very, very happy with this game, and I'm already looking at the trophy list, saying, all right, how do I get this platinum? Because I want this shit real bad. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it for the Dead Space Remake review. Thank you so much for watching and listening with us. We are also closing out episode 133, I believe. Let me check my notes. Yep. Of the Two Penny Gamescast, which you can watch over at youtube.com/2pennygames every Monday, 8 a.m. Central Time, alongside every mainstream podcast service of your choice. And you can watch us record these live every Sunday at 3 p.m. Central Time, twitch.tv/2pennygames. Until next time, have a great time. Connor, say goodbye to the people.
Bye, people.